"We all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding," my mother said with a sneer. "Good to know," I replied. I transferred the €6,000 from the honeymoon fund back into my account and canceled the flights I'd booked in her name. By morning, I had 27 missed calls and one message that changed everything. It was a Tuesday when the message arrived, just 3 words: "We all agreed." At first, I wasn't sure what it meant, but the knot in my stomach already knew. A minute later, my phone buzzed again, and this time it was a full sentence, sent by my mother. "We all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding." No punctuation, just that haughty tone she always used when she wanted to sound formal. A cynical smile in text form. I stared at the message, rereading it as if the words might change if I blinked enough times. But they didn't. My sister's wedding, the one I helped pay for, the one I helped plan, the one I spent months putting out emotional fires for, listening to crying jags and booking every single vendor because my sister, Lucia, was too stressed to handle it. The same Lucia who, 2 weeks ago, called me her emotional support while I transferred another €1,700 for centerpieces that looked like someone vomited pastels onto a florist's catalog. My name is Nicholas. I'm 32, and until that message, I thought I was doing something good, being the glue that held together a family that always seemed one missed call away from shattering. I'm not rich, not by a long shot, but I've been working in tech long enough to have some savings. I've lived modestly, stayed single, and saved while others splurged and took out loans. For years, I thought that meant I was lucky and they were just unlucky. Turns out, being the responsible one just makes you the family ATM with no overdraft protection. The wedding was supposed to be the next Saturday at a seaside venue with a ridiculous ivory and gold themes that my sister insisted was elegant but looked more like a royal baby shower. I paid half the venue deposit, booked the flights, even secured the honeymoon suite in the Canary Islands in my name because my mother's credit wasn't good enough to guarantee the reservation. And now I wasn't welcome. I didn't reply to the message. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened my laptop and discreetly logged into the travel portal I'd used for the honeymoon flights. 2 business-class round-trip tickets, registered to my email. I clicked cancel and watched the screen flicker for a second before the refund notification popped up. €3,900. Then I logged into my savings account and initiated a transfer. €17,000, exactly the amount I'd sent Isabel, my mother, the month before, for what she called additional wedding costs. I didn't say a word to anyone. Just watched the numbers move. I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not even sadness. Just a strange sense of calm, like I'd been holding my breath for years and could finally exhale. The first call came at 8:19 p.m. It was Lucia. I let it ring. Then my cousin called. Then Uncle Joaquin. Then Isabel. I turned off notifications and went on with my evening, reheating leftovers and watching a documentary I didn't absorb a second of. The next morning, I had 27 missed calls, 4 voicemails, and 1 message that stopped me cold. "Call me, please. It's your father." That's what stopped me. My father usually stays out of the chaos. He's a quiet man, the kind who'd rather fix a broken coffee maker than wade into family drama. As a kid, I used to think he didn't care. Growing up, I realized it wasn't that, he just chose his battles well. And him getting involved in this one meant something was very wrong. But before I could process it, the voicemails started playing in my head, on repeat, even though I hadn't even pressed play. I imagined Lucia's whiny tone, Isabel's theatrical crying, maybe a guilt trip from some aunt I hadn't heard from in 2 years. I wanted to delete them all, I really did. But that single message from Fernando, my father, lingered. This didn't come out of nowhere. It started small. A side comment here, a jab there. Last Christmas, Isabel said, "Well, at least Lucia will give us grandchildren." Not everyone can say that. I'd laughed it off at the time. I've never wanted kids, and I'm fine with that. But it stung in a way I didn't even want to admit. Then at Lucia's engagement dinner, I noticed I wasn't seated at the main table. Just to keep everything balanced, Isabel said. But my younger cousin's boyfriend, who she'd only been dating for 3 months, was seated next to the groom. I swallowed that too, like always. It was always small paper cuts, never big enough to justify a confrontation. Until they were. After Lucia got engaged, everything became an emergency. Isabel would call me, panicking about cake samples. Lucia would have meltdowns about bridesmaid dresses. I was expected to cover whatever the groom's family didn't, and I did. Because I thought helping was belonging, that showing up with my wallet was how I proved I mattered. But it never earned me a seat. It just made me the unpaid intern of their dream wedding. And now I wasn't even invited. That morning, I sat on the edge of my bed. My laptop was still open, the email confirmation of the canceled flights glowing on the screen like a silent beacon of refusal. I scrolled through the missed calls, each name ringing louder than the last, until I got to Fernando's message. Just 6 words. You need to see this. Now. That's when my stomach dropped. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. You need to see this. Now. 6 words, but they carried a weight heavier than guilt. My father has always been a man of few words, but each one is measured. He's not dramatic like Isabel, not manipulative like Lucia, and definitely not the type to panic. So, if he said I needed to see something, it wasn't going to be another tearful voicemail or a passive-aggressive post in the family group chat. I called him. He answered before the second ring. Nicholas, he said quietly. Do you have a minute? Yes, I replied, my mouth suddenly dry. What's going on? There was a pause. I heard the muffled hum of the television in the background, then the click of the screen being turned off. I didn't know they were going to do that. Your mother and your sister. Do what? I found out this morning, after they finalized the seating chart and announced it in the family group chat. I'm not even in that group. I muttered, more to myself than to him, I know. He replied softly, that's part of the problem. Another pause, then, Nicholas, they told everyone you decided not to come. That hit me harder than I expected. I blinked, trying to comprehend it. What? They said you were doing one of your loner things, that you got upset over something minor and canceled. Lucia told the family you've always been a bit dramatic and that this time you just went too far. That you didn't want to be there. I let out a dry, bitter laugh, devoid of humor. So, they kicked me out and made it look like it was my decision. Worse, Fernando added. Isabel said you threatened to ruin the wedding if you came. That took my breath away. What? Fernando sighed, like he didn't want to be the one to tell me. She told Lucia's fiancé's family that you were emotionally unstable, that you were still resentful about being single, that you were jealous of your sister's happiness. She said you were making it all about you, as always. As always. My voice cracked. I had to stand up. Suddenly, my apartment felt smaller. I know, son, he said quickly. I know you're not like that. I've seen how you've picked up every piece they've dropped. You organized the entire engagement party, and nobody thanked you. You paid off your mother's second credit card last summer without saying a word. You've been there every time they haven't. But they don't see it. Or maybe they do, and it bothers them. I leaned against the counter, my hands shaking. So, all of this exile was staged to make me look bad? Fernando hesitated. Then, with a sigh, he said, it's worse than that. They've already started telling people you refused to pay for the honeymoon out of spite. And that's when I knew something in me had shifted. Something snapped, but not how I thought it would. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't even angry. I felt distant, cold, like I was watching a rerun of a show I used to care about, but whose plot twists I already knew by heart. They took the money, Dad, I said flatly. Euro 6,000, transferred into Mom's account for the honeymoon. I canceled the flights last night. The refund is already in my account. He was silent for a few seconds. Then, quietly, he said, good. It was the first time in years Fernando had openly endorsed one of my decisions. He wasn't a man of grand gestures, but that single word meant everything. Then he added, "Is there anything else?" "I wasn't going to tell you, but I think you need to see this." I heard a rustling on the other end of the line, and then the sound of a notification. I opened my phone. It was a screenshot. A group chat. Isabel, Lucia, and a few of my aunts. My name was all over the conversation. Isabel had written, "Don't worry about Nicholas. He's just being sensitive because no one's ever loved him enough to marry him. I'll talk to him after the wedding when he realizes how childish he's being." Lucia wrote, "He's a ghost. Let him disappear. We just need to make sure he doesn't embarrass us." Carmen wrote, "So, we're agreed? No +1 for him, even if he begs." Isabel replied, "Exactly. No seat, no speech, no drama. He'll get over it. He always does." I read the messages twice. Then a third time. Then I deleted them. Not out of denial, but because I didn't need to see them again to know the truth. I'd always been the outsider in my own family, the helper, the fixer, the invisible glue. But the glue doesn't get a seat at the table. It just holds everything together while it breaks on the inside. And they were right about one thing. I wasn't going to beg. That afternoon, I sat down and started making a list. Not of people to confront, but of systems to dismantle. They wanted me to disappear quietly. But they forgot something. I was the one holding the strings. I canceled the joint Costco membership. Removed their profiles from the family streaming platforms. Deactivated the automatic payments on Lucia's student loan. And best of all, the venue deposit was still in my name. Technically, I was the primary contract holder. They never got around to sending me that check back when I initially booked the date. I'd been putting off that paperwork. Not anymore. It was now at the top of my list. As I looked at the contract, cursor hovering over "Cancel Reservation," I smiled for the first time all day. Because, yes, they thought I was overreacting. This time, I wasn't. By Wednesday morning, my silence had them spiraling. The voicemails went from passive-aggressive to desperate. Lucia's tone changed with each message. First annoyed, then pleading. "Nicholas, can we talk? I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. Isabel didn't mean it." I didn't reply. I listened, arms crossed, each new message just confirming what I already knew. They were trying to shove the toothpaste back into the tube, and it was too late. But I wasn't seeking revenge out of pride. This wasn't an attack. It was liberation. And making sure they felt it. That afternoon, I sat down with a black notebook and started writing. Every account, every automatic payment, every password-protected bill in my name. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being meticulous. The irony is, they always called me the cold one, the robot, the one who didn't feel things like everyone else. They were right in a way. I didn't explode. I didn't yell. I calculated. I logged into Isabel's phone plan, the one I'd been paying since 2019 when she got laid off. I suspended it. She wouldn't even realize it until she tried to make a call during her hair trial on Friday. Lucia's Venmo, still linked to my bank account as a backup card since she overdrafted 3 times in college and never figured out how to unlink it, disconnected. And then I reported a few suspicious charges on my account, for fun. Fraud protection is a beautiful thing. Thursday morning, I received an email from the wedding venue. A polite but firm confirmation. "We have received your cancellation request. As per the contract, the deposit will be forfeited if a new reservation is not made." I smiled. Explain that 1 to 118 guests flying in for a Saturday ceremony that suddenly had no legal reservation. Around noon, Victor, my cousin, called. The only one who ever treated me like a person, not a utility. His voice sounded tired. "Nicholas, what is going on?" I didn't lie. "I'm done funding a family that sees me as a wallet with legs." He sighed. "They're losing it. Lucia's having a meltdown. She says you're ruining her marriage." I let out a dry laugh. If a canceled flight and a frozen honeymoon fund ruin a marriage, Maybe that marriage wasn't meant to last. Victor didn't argue. He just said, "I wish you'd told me sooner. I always knew they took advantage of you." That night, I opened my laptop again and logged into Fernando's old cloud storage account, the one we used when I helped him digitize all the family documents a few years ago. Inside, there was a gold mine. Scanned receipts, emails, even the original invoice for the engagement party I paid for, which Isabel conveniently forgot about. I created a new shared cloud drive and uploaded everything under the title Nicholas Contributions That Nobody Wanted. Then I copied the link and sent it to every member of the family group chat. I didn't write a description. I didn't need to. Less than 5 minutes later, I was kicked out of the family group chat. Perfect. But the real twist came Friday morning, the day before the wedding. I was having coffee, enjoying the silence, when I received an email from the groom's mother, Teresa. We'd met once. She was kind, composed, very proper. The kind of woman who lines up her silverware and says "dearest" instead of "dear." Her message was short, but it shook me more than any voicemail. Subject: concern regarding the wedding. Hello, Nicholas. I wanted to reach out directly. I've heard bits and pieces about what's happening, and frankly, I'm alarmed. Could we speak if you have a moment? I feel like I'm missing some very important information. Regards, Teresa. That was the moment I understood that this wasn't just family gossip anymore. This was a thread unraveling from both ends. I called her. She answered immediately. "Thank you for calling," she said formally, but with a note of concern. "I don't want to pry, but my son just told me the wedding venue might have been canceled." "It was," I replied calmly. "I paid the deposit. It was in my name." She was silent for a moment. "That's not what we were told." "I'm certain." She paused. "Nicholas, I don't know what's been said, but I was told you had refused to come. That you canceled because you were hurt." I let the silence speak for me. Then I asked, "Do her people usually pay for the flowers, the wedding cake, the DJ, and half the venue?" Teresa inhaled sharply. "I didn't know any of that." "Of course not. They didn't need someone to blame while I picked up their slack. And when I stopped funding it, they did what they always do. They blamed me." Her voice dropped. "I understand why you walked away. I would have, too." But then she said, "Nicholas, there's something you should know. Lucia opened a joint credit card with your mother last week, and they used your name on the application." I froze. "What?" "They claimed you'd co-signed. My husband caught it when we were reviewing the final expenses. He recognized your name on the paperwork. That was it. That was the part that changed everything. I wasn't just the family ATM anymore. I was a target." I sat there, the coffee suddenly cold in my hand, as Teresa's words echoed in my ears. "They claimed you co-signed." I hadn't. Not even close. I've always been meticulous about credit, even protective, after watching Isabel default on a car loan when I was in my early 20s and drag her credit score into the abyss, with mine tied behind it because, yes, she'd convinced me to co-sign. I spent nearly a decade repairing my financial reputation. I already knew how to look out for myself. I hadn't co-signed anything for this wedding outside of what I paid directly. "Do you have a copy of the application?" I asked Teresa, my voice controlled, but sharp. "I do," she replied. "Would you like me to forward it to you now?" Minutes later, it landed in my inbox. There it was, staring at me. A high-limit credit card application for wedding expenses with a forged digital signature. My name, my address, my social security number, even my old work email, probably taken from tax forms or bank documents they still had lying around. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel sadness. I felt clarity. All these years, I'd been the backup plan, the fixer, the silent financier. But forging my name? That wasn't desperation. That was privilege soaked in fraud. That was theft. And it was the final straw. I filed a fraud report with the credit card company. Took screenshots of every detail. Then I filed a police report. Attached all the documentation. the forged application, and a notarized statement of non-consent. Then I picked up the phone, and for the first time since that haughty text from Isabel that started all this, I called her. She answered on the second ring, like she'd been waiting. "Nicholas," she said, her voice overly cheerful. "I was just about to call you to dash. I just want to hear it from you," I said coldly. "Did you forge my signature on a credit card application?" Silence. "Nicholas, you're being ridiculous. It was just a backup, in case they went over budget on the honeymoon. You know how these things are, dash. Did you forge my signature?" A long pause. "Lucia said you would have done it if you knew it was important." I let those words hang in the air like a guillotine. "That's not an answer," I said, my voice flat. "But that's fine. You can explain it to the investigator when they call." That broke her mask. "What? Are you serious, Nicholas? We're family. Are you really going to make this ugly over a misunderstanding?" "Mom," I said, cutting her off. "You kicked me out of a wedding I paid for, lied to everyone, and committed fraud using my name. I didn't make this ugly. You did. I'm just bringing to light what was always there. Nicholas, honey, please. We can fix this." I hung up. That night, I drove to Fernando's house. He was waiting for me on the porch, with 2 beers and that quiet, weathered expression he always had when things got serious. "You okay?" he asked as I sat down next to him. I nodded slowly, processing. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. He just handed me a beer and we sat there watching the sun sink behind the trees. Finally, he said, "You did the right thing." And somehow, that meant more than anything else. The fallout was swift. First came the family calls. My aunts, my cousins, even Uncle Joaquin, who hadn't spoken to me since 2016. They all wanted to know what was really going on. Why the wedding was canceled. Why Lucia was posting cryptic Instagram stories about family betrayal. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. The apologies, the guilt trips. "Nicholas, I had no idea. We should have stood up for you. Can we talk, please?" But I was done being their emotional janitor. I left the calls in the voicemail box. I left the texts unread. As for the wedding, it never happened. With the venue canceled and no backup reservation, they tried to improvise a backyard ceremony. But the guests were confused, some turning around mid-flight, and the groom's family, upon learning about the credit card fraud, called the whole thing off. Apparently, financial fraud before the vows doesn't make for good optics. Lucia went on a social media spree. Cryptic stories, Bible verses, passive-aggressive quotes about snakes in the grass and family turning their backs. I didn't flinch. Because you know what? Sometimes the best revenge isn't a dramatic confrontation. It's not yelling. It's not making someone look stupid in front of everyone. Sometimes it's clarity. Quietly dismantling the system that took you for granted. Walking away while the whole rotten house collapses behind you. A week later, I received one final text from Isabel. "You've made your point. We're all suffering. You didn't have to go this far." I didn't reply. Instead, I changed my number, took a few days off work, and booked a trip. Alone. Just me and my laptop at the same resort where Lucia was supposed to spend her honeymoon. The funny thing about being the one who books everything in your name? You get to know the cancellation policies pretty well. I changed the dates, upgraded the suite, added her champagne package to my reservation, and sat on that balcony, drink in hand, with the waves crashing below me, thinking about how long I'd waited for someone to see me. But finally, I saw myself. Not the version they needed. Not the fixer. Not the bank account. Just Nicholas. 32. Free. And finally released from the need to earn a love I never owed them in the first place. I don't know if they'll ever understand what they lost. But I do. And I'm not giving it back.